Hello, everyone, and welcome to the August 26th edition of the Gateway API Community Meeting. As always, this meeting is governed by the Kubernetes Code of Conduct, boiling down effectively to be nice to one another, so please do be nice to one another. We're using Zoom, so when you have questions or interjections, please do use the raise hand feature in Zoom, as that helps us to kind of organize the meeting and keep things flowing. It's an open agenda meeting. We would love if you put your name on the attendance. We like to just kind of keep in touch and see who's joining at what times and stuff like that. You are very welcome to add something to the agenda. We have a bit on the agenda today, but in theory, we should be able to get to it. If we can't, we can always move it on the parking lot and put it at the top of a future meeting. Yeah, I don't, sometimes we stop and see if there's anybody new on the call. There might be today. So if you're new and you want a couple seconds to just say hi, maybe say what you're working on with the Gateway API or what you're doing, please feel free. We'll give a couple seconds for that before we get started on the agenda.
Anyone?
Okay. In that case, let us get going. And just on the off chance there was any network hiccups for me today, let me set up the co-hosts here.
That's not ominous at all, Shane.
I've had some weirdness, so just in case, I don't want to leave us without a host. All right. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share screen and we'll get started on the agenda for today. That is the wrong screen. This is the right one. Okay. All right. I'm going to get started by talking about 140 release. So last we posted this announcement, basically that 140 was in the API refinement documentation phase, which ends with code freeze on today. And so today is technically where we said we would do code freeze, and the state of things is a little mixed. We have 4 things that are considered complete and ready to go. We have quite a few things that remain in progress, and you've probably noticed over the last couple days, pinging people on these and kind of going through them. I wanted to do kind of a quick overview of how I see the world here. Basically, the backend TLS policy ended up having a long tail, and so you can see that there's a couple things that relate to that. CORS has this thing, which in theory doesn't actually have to go out in this release, but I figured I'd leave it on here for a minute just to talk about it. But backend TLS policy makes up a lot of the things that are currently under review. By the way, if you find anything that's not captured on this board, please feel free in GitHub to like add it on here if it needs to be on here. I have missed a couple and I'm getting help with that here and there, so thank you. And then what remains then, so backend TLS policy is like right at the edge, I think, of having, we just merged one thing this morning. We got a couple things left, but there are PR hours up for them. Configurable retries, we'll talk about that one in a second. Backend TLS policy is basically, it got this long tail and we're kind of trying to deal with that long tail right now, but we might be at the end of that. Client certificate verification for gateway listeners. I actually I think I posted on this one that I didn't know exactly where this one was at last. Oh, and Katarzyna updated me.
Yeah, I responded that I created a gap with API and proposed changes for this client self verification. I think this is the original, 91 gap. So this is merged and it's on track.
I think, yeah, that tracks with my memory of things, actually, now that you're jogging it. Okay. Is Arco on here?
Yeah, it would be good for Argo to actually, confirm.
I do not see Arco on here.
I don't see Arco either. Okay. Then in theory, this one might be all set. I'll try to reach, I did actually talk to Arco on Slack earlier this morning, so I know he's at least kind of around, so I'll double check with him. I'll reach out on that one. So then the next ones are, and I had these on the agenda as well, but I guess we can talk about them now.
So PRs for default gateways and the mesh resource definition will be up shortly after this meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I ended up getting kind of swamped, and there was one where Lior and I both thought the other was going to get to it quickly. So we
the mesh one.
it's one of those lovely bits where crossed wires.
Okay. All right. Conformance at a test. Oh, so this is the cores one. In theory, this doesn't have to go into the release. Oh, no, it does. So this is the one where we actually had a problem with the cores. I guess it would be really nice if it made it into the release. This has there was a problem with how we were using types for cores, which we changed now. And it would be nice if that didn't wait a whole nother release. And I
If
think
it's
that's just this one right here. Go ahead. Say what you're going to say.
I was about to say something that didn't make sense as I thought about it, so never mind. Yeah.
Okay, actually, I missed this update from Ricardo. He's been looking at it, so maybe that one's on me to kind of go back and take a look. And then the last one, oh, Katarzyna, you're here. So this is the last one. Then this still kind of relates, but this is the gateway backend TLS, and I think you had a PR up right now that I just linked.
Yes, so on me there are two PR opens regarding the backend TLS. So the moving backend TLS. And so I have a review for almost all of the, let's say, stakeholders, but actually it would be good to reach agreement with Cadence. I'm not sure, Cadence, if you are on the call. Cadence was worried about some naming convention backend and frontend. And I hope that she will be convinced after all of the arguments that it is, let's say, desirable state to have backend and frontend, to have TLS on the gateway level divided into backend and frontend. And there in those tracks, we have some, certificates and other options there. So this is like waiting mostly on Cadence review. So Rob, Nick and Norwin, I think they agreed with this version. And yeah, and there's also the conformance test for Sun, and this is kind of important because Sun is going to be graduated to the standard. And it's also the Sun, I need to rebase because Norwin did some cleanups, right? So I guess that I need to rebase, but Cadence didn't review this pull request, so.
So the cleanup is
Candace?
not merged yet.
Go ahead.
So I would say merge the sound tests first, and I will then rebase my cleanup on your tests that do the cleanup for you. So that's fine for me.
Okay, great. So for the Sun validation, I understand that you, Norwin, and Ricardo, that you run tests and they are passing. So it's like basically waiting on Cadence review. She didn't have time. I pinged her last week, but she didn't have time to do this.
Candace is on here.
Yes,
Candace?
I'm here.
Oh yeah, you're here. Hey, Candace.
Hey, how are you, Katarzyna? Yes, there's been a lot of work on this. I had been asking about a gap for it because I felt like there wasn't enough time, not necessarily this PR, but the one for, it's hard to keep track of all these different ones that are coming in. It's a lot of last minute work for things that we hadn't planned to necessarily have as a part of the release. I
just wanted to clarify that the work which I did in this PR is not that I'm changing any behavior. I'm just, because previously we had on the gateway, we have the backend TLS tract, and with client certificate validation, the GAP 91, we introduced another gateway level configuration, which I called gateway TLS. So after we noticed this, I discussed with Rob and then Nick that it would be good to actually put backend, move backend TLS config there. And because it was already field which was called gateway TLS config, the TLS name was redundant, so I split these into backend and frontend. So all of the behavior regarding why this field is needed and what is the interaction with backend TLS policy, it stays the same. There is no behavioral changes. It's only I rename some field and to move this. And because we've been also looking at asking other implementation, no one already implement this, no one is supporting this. So there is it's not a breaking change. And it's like safe to do this in experimental channel.
Okay. Any more thoughts on that, Candace, then? I think that was my last read of this one too, was I saw Nick's comment, like, cause he said, hey, we can't just remove this. But then I felt like we were resolved because we were like, yeah, nobody's using it, so it's okay to rename it.
I thought it
Any
was
other-
okay to remove it.
Right, I think
my-
that's where we
my
ended up,
opinion.
was we decided it was okay to remove, yes. Rather, to
I
not leave
you know,
behind a
my
deprecated leaf note.
my preference here is in order to move it to a better place, which is what this PR does. If we can't move it to a better place, to remove it. And I definitely want to avoid leaving it where it is. With that said, I think moving it to a better place is sensible and avoids future disruption. It helps the change to what we're doing with back-end TLS make a front-end TLS make a bit more sense, because in the same area we now have a back-end TLS bit of configuration, not to be confused with back-end TLS policy. The overlap is 0. It's just that we're talking about the connection between a gateway and a backend. That's all. I think my vote would be that we should move forward with this PR as it exists. I think we've got a few people that have signed off on it. I don't know. I don't think that it makes sense to pull it out and then try and resubmit it. This has already made it into Gateway API. It's already been through review. We're effectively just renaming it or moving it, but it's in the same resource. The meaning doesn't change, nothing else.
Roger that. And then Norman, I think I kind of forgot what you had said, but I think you'd mentioned that we have tests too, right? That need some updating, or could you remind me what it was you were saying, Norman?
Yeah, so we were implementing various tests in regards to the backend TLS policy, and then I did kind of basically a cleanup to bring them in a more common shape and to get rid of stuff that we actually don't need. But that's kind of conflicting with the tests Katarina is still writing. So I will let her merging her stuff first, and then I can rebase the refactoring and the cleanup on top of her changes and do then the refactoring in the end. So from functional perspective, refactoring is not that important. It's more having a cleanup, a wrap up from the tests we have done so far.
Roger that. Okay. So given that it's not changing anything behavioral, it's API that has not been implemented yet, and given that everything is experimental, plus we have a follow-up that kind of needs this so that we can do a little bit more cleanup, I feel pretty comfortable with moving forward with this, even though it's kind of at the last minute. Mainly just because it's experimental. It's like safe. So I think I would kind of vote that way, unless I see
It's
something
also
else.
it's also less safe if we wait. Like it's going to be more difficult if this goes out.
Yeah, it
another-
causes more
another
pain.
release.
Yeah, that's what Rob was saying. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah. Well,
It looks lovely where you are today, Mike.
Mike always tries to make us jealous by going outside for this meeting. It works.
when
It
the
works
weather's
pretty
nice.
well,
Yeah, you're always outside. I feel like I'm running the risk of developing vampirism, man. I need to get out.
What are you
Okay.
talking about? You're out in space, Shane. You get the most outside of all of us.
The shielding on the ship.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I get nothing. I gotta do like a anyway, we'll get off of it. But
Yeah, it looks like you and Antonio are in the same room, basically.
yeah, we just
We're in
Antonio and I just hang out in space.
same capsule. Yeah.
Yeah. Occasionally
Um,
we mess with people's satellites just for fun.
I still have my hand up
Go ahead.
because I wanted to point out that so originally this work that has to do with renaming gateway.backend TLS, I thought that the original purpose for this was to enable or to facilitate MTLS. I think that was the original purpose for this. And honestly, if that's the case, I think that we really need to take another look at how we have named things. We haven't mentioned anything about the fact that these are just client certs. We haven't mentioned anything about, I mean, in the naming, in order for the naming to be self-documenting. We haven't mentioned anything about this would be used for MTLS. We haven't mentioned, we haven't really documented this in GoDocs very well, and the names are bad too. So
What would you suggest instead for the names?
I think I suggested something in the pull request comments, something like, I don't remember, gateway client certificate backend, gateway backend client certificate or something for what is now called backend.
To clarify, I think the diff on this PR is confusing because you don't see client cert ref anywhere, but I promise it's still there. It's just that we're moving the struct, but the struct doesn't actually change. So if you look at my comment, what the path actually changes to is tls.backend.client certificate ref, but client certificate ref is still very much a part of this. It just isn't obvious in the diff because that struct just isn't changing. We're just moving where we point to it. That's all.
Roger that.
Moving and splitting as well.
We're not splitting, no.
There's two.
What do
Are
you
we
mean?
talking?
I have my hands open. If I can just jump into the discussion, I responded, Kedis, to your comments in the GitHub. So the thing is that the front end was already there because I added this cycle to the GAP 91, the experimental one. So this is something that's gonna stay regardless of whatever the field with backend TLS is inside this track or is on the gateway level. And the second thing is that the backend, like we are moving we are opaquing, let's say, this backend TLS track into into the backend field, because maybe in future this feature is not implemented yet, but maybe in future will be in the place that we need to add some other fields like option mode that we already did in this iteration to the front end. And in this case, we can put this into this backend track. We don't have to do any other moving or renaming, and it will be safer for us to extend this. And look at the fact like that it's not already implemented. I think it's very practice to do this in this opaque shield. And also Nick attached some drawing showing how backend and frontend relates regarding what is the gateway role in frontend TLS and backend TLS. And for me, it really makes sense. And I agree with you that maybe documentation is not really covering everything, but this feature is not graduating to standard. It's experimental, so we can work on better documentation in next cycle. And I'm happy to work on that. Thanks.
One thing that I would like to point out as an observation is that if I look at the Netlify preview for 4009, and then I go look around for things that look related to this, I don't actually see anything about client certificates and stuff like that in there. So we might really want to figure out a way to try to explain this a little bit more than it is right now. That said, I am not opposed to moving things around in experimental that are not currently used by any implementation, but yeah, it doesn't look exactly clear right now.
I think all of this would have been something that we would discuss in a GAP, basically, and we didn't have a GAP for this change, even if it can be considered, even considering it as a small change. We do have GAPs for the purpose of debating this kind of stuff that we're debating now.
Can I jump in? I think
Yeah,
that
I'm probably going to call time fairly soon, just a heads up, but go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, just like a small thing. So I think we as a community, I mean, there, like specifically with this, there's been, you know, we have been trying to meet deadlines, everything. And I agree that the GAP process is there for a reason, but we also as a community need to also kind of think and remember that we should not add more bureaucracy when we do not need it. So we need to be very, I'm not sure if that's the right word, but judgmental about like asking people to do a bunch of red tape for a thing that collectively all maintainers and people that look at it are actually not being used, and we are doing something for improving. And in fact, there are some cases that people just like, stop contributing because of all the red tape that needs to be done. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but again, this is experimental. We may have problems with naming or elaborating things a little bit more, but remember that back in TLS was already approved for experimental previously. This is just moving something around. And I think a lot of the people in the call spend a lot of time trying to understand whether it's used, me included, by the way. I'm not vocal in any of the GitHub comments, but like I've spent time through understanding who and what is using it. And some other people do the work to actually move it. So I think actually just requiring to do a gap for something that should relatively be a short discussion for being approved for experimental is something we should really, think about.
I'm gonna try to put a thing on it because we're getting to the half hour here, but as a renaming of something that was already in a gap, I think it would be fair to say that that doesn't need red tape. But I think Candace's point, amplified by Flynn's, is well taken, that okay, maybe some things are in a gap, but there's actually it's not clear. And this is pretty critical piece of, specification for the gateway that I think everyone's going to probably utilize. And so everyone's a stakeholder. So I think there's a middle ground here with this one. And what I think I might propose is this is what I might propose. And we can take a couple more minutes to talk about this, but I don't want to like get into the details much anymore because we need to cut time here somewhere. Maybe we merge this. Katarzyna asked for an extension, and I'm going to talk about that in a second too. We give an extension and say, okay, we'll merge this, but we do need those improvements to GEP and documentation to make this client part especially more clear as part of that extension. Does that sound reasonable or unreasonable, I suppose, to anybody?
That sounds reasonable to me, with the caveat that I think that the docs in this case are probably more important than anything else, right? Candace notes that bringing up red tape in some cases but not others is not exactly reasonable. I would tend to agree with that. We're editing, we're editing a gap here. We should probably think about that going forward. What were you going to say, Rob?
Yeah, one point I would add is you can also look at this the other way, where we have been incredibly bad at requiring documentation. So we're actually adding a higher bar here than we have for anything else that's new to experimental. Most new things to experimental, unfortunately, merge without meaningful docs, other than look at the gap if you can find it, or look at the reference docs, which is really poor.
I hear you. I hear you on this one. Do you agree?
And to be clear, I think your idea, Shane, is good.
Yeah. No worries. I'm just saying, I get your point actually. Do you agree that the GEP could use? I'm not looking at the GEP. The GEP could use some improvements here, right? That would be a reasonable thing.
The GEP itself, it should be updated to cover the rename. I don't think that the GEP really changed. Like the functionality described hasn't changed. It's just
let me jump in for a second there and point out that if you go look over the GEPs right now, you've got GEP 91 about client certificate validation for TLS terminating at a gateway. You've got another GEP for TLS updates for HTTP2. You've got another one for backend TLS policy. You've got another one for gateway TLS updates in HTTP2, which looks like it ought to be a duplicate of the first one. So why are they both listed in experiment? Why is that listed in both implementable and experimental? I can't even talk. If you try to go in and read what is there to learn how to work with TLS in Gateway API, you are currently doomed. It can't be done. And that's the thing that I'm really saying, is that we got to have user-facing doc for this stuff. That's less a commentary on this particular PR and more a commentary on we've made this sufficiently confusing that nobody is in their right mind is going to be able to figure it out. So we should fix that.
Yeah,
Uh,
+1. And my suggestion for where to fix that, like, although we can, you know, do incremental updates to gaps, I don't think we want to merge a bunch of gaps together because that's complicated. So I think we should just merge the concepts together in docs, which we haven't done very much yet. But yeah,
Yeah.
+1. That needs work.
That sounds good. I'm gonna call time, and Leslie, or you have something very tiny. My intention is to call time here and basically take the whole conversation that we had here, and I will work after this to kind of distill that into a comment with a plan for going forward. We can give it a little bit of time. And with that, I'd like to jump onto the next thing. As we've kind of seen as we've been going over the progress board, quite a few things remain in progress. Katarzyna has gone ahead and just proactively requested an extension, understanding that more time may be needed. Anybody else who has something that's in progress, please, on your issues, specifically call out that you need a time extension to continue things. Or if you prefer to just say, actually, I'd like to park this and we can try again in 1.5. So I think that covers, we did kind of, oop, did I close it? Come back. We did kind of cover, I think, every topic, and appreciate everybody's time on that. It sounds like just about everything is good. Oh, this was the one I meant to. Sorry. No, we didn't cover every topic.
Yeah.
This one was the one that we didn't get to. I said we'd come back to. So my memory of this, and I think I posted this somewhere, but my memory of this one is that actually Mike was on a call in the previous week saying he needed support. He needed somebody with capacity to jump in and help carry this forward. And we basically weren't able to pull that together. Is that where that is? Is this Mike's on here? I mean,
yeah.
Do we need to park this? Do we need to park this one?
So that was 2 weeks ago. I think you missed the update last week when I came on and basically said we left a really significant warning in the experimental gap that says, hey, we need to figure out how to resolve this across different implementations that may have divergent behavior. And we never came back to that, and I don't think we can do that in a week. So yes, intention is to park this. I will try to get that sorted out before we bringing this back up for 1.5. So yeah, I think just there was a little bit more work needed than I had realized in the short time frame.
Roger that. Thank you for the update, and thank you for your work on it. I'll follow up with you on the issue then after this. All right, so that covers, wait, what's this one? I forget this one. Correct. Oh, yeah, I remember this one. Okay, this one is incorrect conformance tests and reporting for mesh. Didn't we end up with some PRs and this is done?
Yeah, I think that's dependent on the mesh resource. But
okay.
Lior, am I wrong about that?
Yeah, well, it depends how much we want to make this issue as a catch-all issue, because initially the problem is that mesh implementations today report conformance for things that they're actually not being tested against mesh. That was mainly the first thing. Then there is adding a set of at least basic conformance tests for mesh that was done. I think there's obviously still more to do, but that was done, and I'm trying in conformance test at time reviewer to also have mesh being considered to add. But then there's the last thing, which is making sure that we're able to read supported features from a mesh resource, which I would consider parallel track, because it doesn't matter if you supply the features manually or you actually read them from a mesh resource to actually being able to report conformance for mesh successfully. So yeah, so
how important is it to the mesh leads here that this makes it in 1.4.0?
Oh, I think it's important. I think the bit that we need, the bit that we have to actually with the mesh leads double check immediately is actually if any mesh implementation is actually still reporting things that are not conformant, actually still reporting it on mesh. I think we've removed it from the framework, but I'm not 100% sure. So I think we gotta need to check this and then work on an announcement that we promise to say, hey, in 1.4 you're going to see that mesh features are going they're going to be a decrease in support for mesh features. This is expected because we are now fixed an issue with the framework, whatever.
Mike?
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, my understanding is that Lior has. We should confirm. My understanding is that Lior fixed like the core issue here. The core issue is like the things that we're reporting were factually incorrect because it was like Istio's north-south HTTP route would say like, oh, all of those things are also working for mesh when that was not actually tested at all.
That is
I
also
think
my understanding, to be clear. But
yeah. And so
good,
I
good
think
topic.
that some of the
Good
more
topic
extensive
next
stuff
time we
of
get
like
together.
the mesh resource and supported features that can continue on a parallel track. And that we should probably close this out once we've determined that like, yes, we are no longer incorrectly reporting things or false advertising.
Okay.
And
So
I
this one's
realize that
technically in
confirming,
progress.
and I realize that confirming that that is my understanding contradicts what I said earlier about the mesh resource. That would be because listening to Lior made me realize that I was conflating two things that should not be conflated.
Okay.
So,
Okay. So it sounds
so
like
I
there's
think-
a confirmation that needs to happen, and then technically this can be closed for the purposes of 140, and then other things can be spun off for future releases.
I would
Yes?
I would suggest, so I can take the confirmation if someone can take the small blurb or whatever, whoever's writing the release changelog, to make sure we're adding a section to say that it is expected to see a drop in supported mesh features. Based on this, whatever reference we can elaborate on the naming, they'll be also good. So I think this issue should spawn this to workstream confirming and edit, making sure that we add it to the changelog.
Okay. Could you make a comment to that effect for me? I'll be the one writing the changelog.
Okay.
Just comment what you want to be kind of distilled into the changelog, and I'll make sure that it gets captured.
Sounds good.
But otherwise, it sounds like we'll double check. We'll work on, there'll be something important for the changelog, then this can be resolved. Other issues will spin off of it for later. Okay, so I pulled it into in progress. For the sake of treating everyone the same and fairly, if you would please ask for an extension on here. And then that actually concludes, I think, everything on the project board. I did want to talk about a couple of things, but I think I would like to give, since we are at 40 minutes after, I'd like to give others a chance to go first, and maybe we can come back to my topics because they're a little less pressing, potentially. So I'll put those at the end in case we can get to them, and we'll move to Katarzyna. Oh wait, we kind of talked about this, didn't
We
we?
talked about that, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else to add there?
No, thank you.
Okay. Ricardo, the GoDoc metagap.
Yeah, just if someone didn't follow it, this one, we had this discussion about how overwhelming our GoDocs they are for users when you are doing some certification or when you are an SRE needing to fix problems, and then you do a kubectl explaining and figure that huge explanation on what a conflict means on a gateway, as an example. So I have raised this issue. I wanted to first ask for some feedback if this explanation and the proposal is fine. And then I will probably, if no one wants to, it's also an opportunity if someone else wants to contribute. Otherwise, I will start writing a metagap of what we should be adding to the GoDoc specs, when we should be skipping things from CRDs to try to make our user experience a bit better. But I wanted to, to raise this. We had this huge discussion if someone lost on the Slack thread. Thanks for everyone that chimed in, but that's it.
I'd like to caution you that you're signing up to be our doc wrangler, so just bear that in mind.
Yes, you should have done this under an alias, Ricardo.
I'm probably the worst person for documentation, but that's the risk that you are, getting for yourself. So that's a.
Thank you for being proactive about this.
Like
I
use ChatGPT on scenic mode. I have just realized that there is a scenic mode on ChatGPT, and I'm using on scenic mode now. So up to you.
Finally, I will be able to replace myself on Slack. Cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. I really like the idea of the metagap. I think that's great.
Yeah, I like it too. I'll double check this one, put it in my to-do list here, but yeah, I think that sounds like a good energy there. Oh, sorry, what were the asks? You just want people to kind of chime in and like,
Yeah, if
look.
someone reminds any other case or just want to, be aware, just subscribe to this issue. If someone
Roger
wants to work on that, let me know. Otherwise, I will be, I will wait for the 1.4 release to start working on this one and get some feedback loop, and maybe even get some planning on how we should be already improving that for 1.5 CRDs.
Roger that. Cool. I don't see any hands up. The issue's 4012. Please subscribe. Ricardo, your next one is, should the GEP template be? Oh man, yeah. Well, I read Flynn's yes first, and that made me laugh when it said, should the GEP template. Okay, should the GEP template be updated to contain conformance test expectations?
So
it's hard to see why we would disagree with that,
Isn't it the case now?
I don't think so.
I think so. Reading as an example, been reviewing the listener set one, right? And Dave is here as well. I think there is some sort of confusion of like what we want to test on conformance for a feature, right? I'm not sure on backend TLS policy as an example, but my rationale here, it's like we keep using issues to define what the conformance is, right? So anyone willing to implement a new feature from a gap, we need to track between the gap and, as an example, the issue that it's implementing that conformance. Eventually, we need to read the description of the conformance test inside the code just to be sure that, okay, I'm conformant or not, right? So first, I'm being really picky on conformance that I am reviewing, asking people to be more descriptive, at least on what the test means. And I'm being really annoying on that. But from an implementation side, and even from a contribution side, I think it would be good to have some checkboxes also, like what the conformance of that feature means. So if I put an object, a resource, like let's say backend TLS policy, which is wrong, I need a conformance test that will say like, okay, this is invalid because of this condition. That it's invalid because of that condition. I don't want to, again, as Lior, you added, like, I don't want to add bureaucracy on that. I think that when you are thinking on a new feature, you need to think what conformance means to that feature, and probably just having some sort of table or something like that that says like, okay, we are this is what we expect on conformance. Making it easy to track why something is conformant or not. And eventually, if we decide that something new should be conformant, we can just update the gap. We don't need to add that to any bureaucracy or something like that, but we need to track why that new conformance was added and why it's related with some sort of feature. But yeah, go for it.
So just to make sure I understand, you're saying that instead of, what we have right now, which is just a block to describe our conformance, you're saying, like, adding language that we should actually lay down all the supported because like the way we're doing conformance, and feel free everyone to jump if you don't think that's the case, but we're doing it by supported features, right? Like, or there's something that's core, so it's probably going to be tested for core as a full functionality. The things for core is like, okay, backend, like, let's just take an example that we all familiar with, HTTP route. So if I want to do host based routing, so this is core for HTTP route. So, but like, so I'm trying to understand the feedback. So you're saying when I'm proposing something, I should have like a broken down core and extended probably lists under conformance, and then I should spell in all the conformance tests that will probably determine what is considered conformant or not.
Yes, I wouldn't do that retroactive. I would say, as an example, we don't have, let me put an example right now, like we don't have a gap for TLS route, right? We are just, implementing based on issue. Let's say we decide to write a gap for TLS route. So I would like to get in the gap something, some specific section that says like what a conformant implementation for TLS route means, at least on this initial implementation. which is already experimental. And when we promote, we can just, you know, mark checkbox. And then I decide to have this new, you know, feature on TLS route that it's a new gap. So eventually we need to, and we do have mechanisms for that, like to make relations, saying like this gap relates with this gap, and probably we need to update on one of those gaps what the conformance for this new TLS route feature means, right? But
Yeah,
more on because today you need to read the whole gap just to understand what's expected on the conformance, and then you need to read the whole conformance test just to see what it's expected. You know, it kind of makes hard even to get people implementing the conformance test the way that we expect. So in my yeah, go for it. Sorry.
I was saying I 100% agree with you. By the challenge I have in mind here is how to enforce it. Like as an example, I edited the GEP template for actually, I think, describing like, hey, you should also like what's the mesh conformance expectation. But then still, like on every conformance test, I would come if I'm CC'd or it's come to implementation, I would come like, hey, can we do something for mesh? I'm just like, again, like I'm 100 like plus 100 to this. It's just like I'm finding it hard to understand how we enforce it, both in the first place when someone writes a gap, that's a little bit more easy. But then when someone comes and add or change a conformance test, then like we'll need to already like remember to, hey, go to the gap, change it there as well. So this is something that will be nice if you have any idea from previous experience how to enforce that. But like this is also some worry because like I'll give a transparent comment. If I would write a gap, and in the gap I would be asked to have all this broken down conformance explanation, and then I would see that during the last months nobody had done it. So then I'll be frustrated because I was like, okay, we should decide whether we enforce it or we're not enforcing it.
Roger
Yeah.
that.
Doesn't that
So
doesn't that kind of fall under the category of gap reviewers, though? I mean, if we
yeah,
decide that the gap is supposed to, you know, give a high-level description about what's up with conformance test, then if you're reviewing a gap and it doesn't say that, you would come back and go, "Hey, you need to talk about how we should test this." I don't. I would like to not have the gaps try to spell out, you know, the code for conformance, but saying things like, "Oh, we're adding TLS route. We're adding the ability for TLS route to route on the key fingerprint," and then you could describe something like, "So if they set this thing and it has this fingerprint, then this should happen or not happen," right? That should be a pretty short section.
yeah, I think that Ricardo has done a really good job of looking through the repository recently and finding things that have kind of gone by the wayside. He's done a good job
I
here,
would,
I think, of
I think I would say
identifying.
horrifying, not just good. Yeah.
He's done a horrifyingly good job of identifying
Exactly.
some things that have gone by the wayside. And I think that what he's done here is he has basically called out the what and why. We don't need to worry about the how just yet. So I would be in favor of us creating an issue basically describing this what and why, and we can figure out how we want to solve it. But it sounds like, and we can get some more feedback on this asynchronously, sounds like everybody thinks the idea is generally good. And I got to be honest, I hadn't even thought of this before, but the idea that like you go look at the GEP to get an idea of what you're even going to have to be testing, like how the tests are what's going to be required of you for testing, I think makes a ton of sense, particularly for new implementations. For all implementations, certainly, but very much for like people who've not been with the project since 2019. So that sounds great. Thank you for bringing this up, and I would definitely recommend just throw in an issue, and we can triage and follow up on that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. We did this a couple weeks ago, and I wanted to do it again now. So just so you know, if you already put down feedback in the previous 2 weeks ago one, you don't have to reiterate your feedback. We're just collecting these as we go. But the idea is 140 was kind of we took another step, another kind of jump in terms of how we do the releases. We have like a release management process now that we're trying. And one of the things that's been driving the release process, I guess, one of the things been motivating us to have more of a release process has been the idea that we'd really like to get to 3 releases a year if we can. We'd really like to have more and faster releases instead of releases that kind of drag on and end up with only 2 every year. If we can achieve that, that would be great. So just know that that's been part of what's motivating some of the things like deadlines and stuff like that. But at the same time, we don't want to be hurting people. So we understand that these things can be a little crunchy. So we want your feedback, especially critical feedback. If your experience throughout this release process, if you have negative feedback, if you have positive feedback, please just dump it right here in the doc. Feel free. We're collecting this as we go. It's very helpful for us because we're going to continue to iterate on this. This process is not complete by any means. So just kind of an open door. Like, please let us know if how you're feeling about how the release process are going. If you have any ideas, any things that you, even if you're like, actually, I think the release process should be this. You should do it this way. We'd love to hear it. I don't see any hands up, so I'll assume people will just go put that in there, and we can move on to the last topic. Go ahead.
Do you have you gotten feedback that is not already in the document? I am wearing my release manager for the next release hat at the moment, and I want to make sure that I see all of that.
These are the pieces of release feedback we got so far, so they don't need to be
Okay.
reiterated. I'll just be collecting them because we want to incorporate them into kind of, yeah.
If Norman is still on the call, KAL?
Cube API linter. Maybe you missed that
Got
one.
it.
It's quite
yeah.
an effort to get it in.
Yeah.
Did that cause a problem?
No, I was just surprised how fast.
I got you.
We can
As a
iterate.
stakeholder, you felt it was hard to keep track of that.
I will say, like, you know, we
find agreement.
So this is something that I also volunteered and asked Ricardo to help bring this to Gateway Inference Extension as well. And I witnessed firsthand that it can be more disruptive than I realized. And this is on me.
Always.
But you know, it resulted in some pretty big changes to the Go types. And even though the API itself was the same, if you're relying on Go types, kube clients, whatever in Go, then it was a pretty disruptive change that
it's more meant as an example, so don't get me wrong. I think it's a good idea to integrate it and all that stuff.
Yeah,
just mentioned as an example.
Yeah, no, it's a good example. I don't think anybody did anything wrong in this case.
No,
but we do technically have this whole thing where we're supposed to create issues, triage them, and kind of move them forward that way so they're a little bit less surprising. Nobody did anything wrong in this case, but we could get better about that in general. And that's actually one of the topics I had to talk about today.
Yeah, I mean, I think this, to be clear, I think Kube API linter is great, awesome, exciting. I'm glad that we added it. I just, you know, I think we all, or at least I, underestimated the disruption it would cause. And had I known that, we would have communicated, you know, more loudly and rolled out more slowly the changes associated with it.
Roger that. So yeah, I'll follow up on that with something that relates. But please do continue. Like, none of these will be lost. I'm gonna go back and grab all of these eventually. But please do just asynchronously, even after this call, if you want to, drop things into the feedback. It will be read. Last topic with 5 minutes to go. We don't, this relates a little bit. We don't, our triage process isn't really working. We technically have one, and we even, yeah, exactly. We have a triage process. At one point, we had a project board that the triage was actually falling into the left column, and we would go through them. And on previous recordings, you'll find that, like, we actually did try, but we've not been doing a great job of keeping up with the triage. And in fact, the machinery for the triage is a little borked. I think that, so it's been years since I configured a whole lot of stuff for the repositories in Kubernetes 6. I think that we are missing an integration that will actually auto flag things as needs triage. And if anybody knows where and how to do that, it would be great for somebody to jump in and just set that up. I think it has to be set up in the Kubernetes org under the whatchamacallit. I can't remember the name of the repo all of a sudden. But I think there's a way to do that, so we should dig into that. So if not, I did actually write a script that does it. But I think we just in general need to be better about triage. So like I think what I'm really going for is a general call out to people, like when you create issues, when you see issues and stuff like that, please do kind of put them through. Like I see sometimes like people, this isn't a problem. I'm not mad at anybody or anything, but if you create an issue, like I see a lot of issues just get created and then immediately assigned. It's like, technically we should go through the triage process. I think we should stick with that. And then in general, we actually need to come up with a process so that we actually get through the backlog of triage things. I think there's a lot in there right now. So example with Gen AI.
So so I brought it up.
Oh, cool.
I don't know where. I brought it up. I forgot, but like, I don't understand the dynamics of fundings and Kubernetes. So therefore, we have people like yourself that does understand it. But there is like actually some very cool things you could do with Gemini CLI or whatever other you want to basically define, and it actually works nice. I've seen this working really good. If we want to explore that potentially could remove some burden from maintainers. And there are some other examples in these workflows which we could use, but I have no idea how to get and who should we talk to get some funding.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. DosuBot. Does anybody use that in Kubernetes? Okay. Yeah, we take it off. Okay. So yeah, if anybody has memory of like how this is set up on other repos, great. If not, I think I'm just going to dig into it. But I really want. I'm probably going to park this and try to get back to like some kind of. I don't know if you guys seen our issues, but like
there are a lot of them.
Thank God it's not that. Oh my Lord. 1.4K. But there's 159 issues. There's 48 pull requests. Like we have this backlog. We're busy right now, so I don't think it's going to happen this week. But we have this backlog. If anybody has ideas about how we can help with the backlog, specifically how we can triage things, if you see issues that you've created or that other people created that you have a pretty keen, like I get what's going on here, and you can help to kind of triage them, move them forward, that would be great. Otherwise, I think in the coming meetings, I'm going to try to get back to triage if we can. Rob, do you have anything to say about this? I don't want to be like, just like, we must triage. And you're like, we can't, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm fine to triage. For better or worse, our meetings usually end up pretty full. I would be, I don't know. I don't know the best way to do this. If we end up doing what some other open source meetings do, we would fill the first 15 minutes of a meeting with triage, which would almost certainly land us in trouble getting through the rest of our agenda. And I don't know that triage is more important than some of the other things we discuss in our meeting. If we leave it to the end, that's also also suboptimal. I don't have a good solution here, but yeah, I mean the ideas of relying on Gen AI, some kind of like bots that can help with this seems like a useful starting point. I don't know.
The nice thing about the bots is that they can act as a starting point, and then you can always change, hey, why did it mark this as triage? We already know. So then you could just go through and fix it. But yeah.
Okay. So for today, just a couple of call outs. Try to put things through the triage process a little bit. Some issues pop up in our auto assign. Sometimes it's okay, but for the most part, try to label them as triage. And then in general, if anybody's out there, triage is not necessary. It doesn't have to be just maintainers. Like triage can be, you know, about a subject, comment on it with like, here's my suggestions about how we could move forward. That would be helpful. Please do. Otherwise, I'm going to try to come up with find some machinery that will help us get that working correctly. Because right now it's just kind of it's a clank. So
yeah,
cool. That's the end. We are at 12:01. So actually went a little bit too far. Apologize. Lior, did you have something really quick?
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize my hand's up.
Yeah, no sweat then. Cool. Thank you everybody for your time today. Until next time. Cheers.
See you.